Okay, great. So, well, if people come in a little bit late, I think there's one person that I know messaged me. I just want to make sure he's in, and then we'll get started. Right. And it's another David guy.
I need to click, got it.
David Neff.
Yeah.
On the screen.
You are no longer. Let me just make sure he's okay. Okay, someone's going to be in, but I can't.
Thing in the middle with the got it.
There's Susan. Okay. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Yeah.
Kitty.
Oh, there she is. Hi, Susan.
Hi. We meet so soon.
Yeah. How's your tooth?
Oh, I have an appointment on Wednesday.
Good.
Honestly, we'll just get started now. I know there's one person who might be a little bit late, but we'll get started here. But welcome everyone. We want to. We have been working months and months on David von Kampen's work in Glory Everlasting, and as I was looking through the music to buy, this piece was the one that I really thought, because David, what we were trying to do is do a program of praise, and this one really spoke in terms of the Te Deum Laudamus, the text that we did, and really how you combine both the jazz idiom and you also combine classical music. And some of the choir told me that I don't know if this is going to be able to. They didn't know about this piece, but by the end of the process, they really enjoyed it. And so, David, I just talk about your musical background and how you got into music. I know a little bit about you and through Facebook and stuff like that, but just talk about your background and then talk about how did In Glory Everlasting, the Te Deum Laudamus come about?
Yeah, well, man, it's so nice to be here. And it's so nice that you're all on computers. Usually when I talk to choirs, they're all in one room and you're trying to like rig up a screen and it's awkward. This is better for talking, I think. It's nice to actually see all of you. Okay, so musical background. I have a musical family. My dad's a choir director. My mom plays flute, or she used to play flute, and she taught private voice lessons in our house all through my childhood. There was always music in the house. I started piano lessons at a young age. I was always more interested in making songs up and improvising and playing by ear, rather than, like learning the piano music I was supposed to be learning for my piano lessons. And really, I had no interest in playing other people's notated music until maybe college, until I started working in more like ensemble settings. The solo piano literature that you play as a young pianist never really spoke to me, which is probably a deficiency on my part. But the silver lining there was that I got all my enjoyment of music from creative things and playing by ear, and kind of without realizing it, I sort of developed the toolbox and the ears that composers need. So I was kind of composing as a hobby in like grade school and high school. I don't think I wrote anything particularly great during those times, but I was listening to a lot of really good music, and so I was able to sort of, I think, fake my way into writing some compelling pieces for a very young composer. But it wasn't until college I majored in composition, and then that was kind of when I started listening to what I would call serious music, started really diving into like classical composers and contemporary jazz. That's when I got into vocal jazz, which was really kind of opened my ears to that harmony even further. And it's kind of all been downhill in a good way since then. All of my downhill, like easy, like it's rolling. All my degrees are in composition. I got undergrad and master's at University of Nebraska, which is where I teach now in the School of Music there in Lincoln. And then I went down to Lawrence, Kansas to do my doctorate at University of Kansas. And I was a music theory GTA, and that was my first music theory teaching experience. Just been composing the whole time. I'm interested in all sorts of music, and that's kind of how we got here. Let's see. Did that answer your question? Was there another part?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Wonderful. So yeah, and obviously on the music, they got a little of your background, and I know University of Kansas is a wonderful school of
Oh,
music,
loved
and
it
you're
there.
in the middle of the United States, and we're on the East Coast. We're in the
Yes,
South.
I don't even know where you guys are. I didn't even look. Where are you?
So we are. It's called Millersville Community Church. It's a part of Lancaster County.
In what state?
So, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay, yes. Okay, that's right. I did see that.
Yeah.
Near Philadelphia.
Near Philadelphia.
Great.
So yeah,
Great. Very
Philadelphia,
good.
Chester County, it's the southeast part of, so Millersville is kind of the western part of Lancaster
Mhm.
County, but
Mhm.
people usually get Lancaster County often. And when I go outside Lancaster County,
Gotcha.
I
Gotcha.
sing all over, they say, what is Lancaster
Uh-huh.
County? It's where the Amish live.
Did you
So-
see the movie Witness with Harrison Ford?
Yes, that's you.
That's Lancaster County where the Amish are. That's it.
Okay,
So
terrific.
you've seen what it looks like.
But
But
David,
now
really,
we're going to be famous for being the premier choir that sang the David Van Kampen and
believe-
Glory Everlasting.
I believe you gave the Pennsylvania premiere. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm
Yeah.
quite confident that you did.
yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. David, you would know better than I would, but really, Millersville Community Church is right off the campus of Millersville University. So
Mhm.
it's like literally the university is here and the church is there. So it's not in the middle of farms necessarily, although we have a Hope campus that is a part of a farm there. We have
That's
two
cool.
campuses, a Hope campus and a Grace campus. So,
Mhm.
so
Very nice.
can you talk to me about your Peace and Glory Everlasting? How
Yeah.
it came about? I know it's pretty recent. And what was your plans in recording that? Was it commissioned? How was it brought about?
Yeah, so it was commissioned. When I was at University of Nebraska doing my master's degree, my degree was in composition, but I took graduate choral conducting in all 4 semesters because I wanted to get better at conducting. And I don't even know if I registered for the class, but I just always showed up and sang and conducted, and they let me kind of tag along. And one of the friends I made in that class was named Eric Harstead, and he was a little bit older than me, and he graduated and moved up to Minnesota. He's in the Twin Cities area, and he directs a community choir there. And he talked to me back, I want to say this piece is from 2018, I think. So about 4 or 5 years ago. And he said, we're interested in commissioning sort of a medium-sized work. And we talked and kind of talked back and forth about what they were looking for. He wanted a sacred work, but he didn't really have a specific text in mind. And I sort of suggested as a kind of model piece to think about the Frostiana by Randall Thompson, setting all the poetry of Robert Frost, a really wonderful set of SATB pieces that are within the scope of amateur groups. You don't need to be a professional choir to sing them well. It's serious music. It's super well crafted, but it's not extremely technically difficult. And obviously they wanted something sacred. So I was sort of thinking about Frostiana and just sort of thumbing through the hymnal, our hymnal, the old blue hymnal, Lutheran worship. And I came across the Te Deum, which is the hymn 8 in our old blue hymnal. And it's the exact text I ended up using for this. And I just thought, okay, so we have this sort of chant-like setting from the opening liturgy of the blue hymnal. And what if I just take those words and wipe all the music clean and just compose something brand new? And I had to kind of figure out how to break it up because, as you know, we've got the 4 movements. But if you read this text straight down without the movements breaking it up in the score, I don't think it necessarily breaks itself into those 4 pieces. I tried to kind of sell my choices musically and make it feel like 4 segments of a larger work. But the text really flows kind of straight down. And that's certainly how it's presented in the old hymnal. It goes to it's in B flat major, and in the hymnal, it goes to B flat minor on the parallel when on yourself to deliver man. That whole section is in the parallel minor. But that was really the only kind of hint I had about how to break it up, and I thought 4 movements was kind of the right idea. They'd all be 3, 4, 5 minutes, put the whole thing together, and it's about 12 to 15 minutes, somewhere in there. So other than that, I just wanted it to be singable and accessible. And anytime I write for really anything, but especially, church choirs, amateur choirs, young singers, I want it to be very approachable. I don't want to write things that are super technically difficult or demanding on the voice, which doesn't mean that you should never challenge singers, as you know from singing it. There are maybe some parts that were more challenging than others, but in general, I just try and keep it very approachable and very melodic and very singable, and then let the piano and the strings kind of do a little more of the heavy lifting of some of the more challenging harmonies and surprising moments. That's the goal anyway. It's not really for me to say if any of that was successful. I hope it is. I hope you had a good time singing it, and that kind of rings true, but that was my thought process, my goal at least.
Yeah, and that's excellent. That's excellent. And obviously, I'll have one more question. And I'll have more, but I want to open it up to the people obviously here. I think everybody here or family members or of the choir here. Everybody, I think, was of the choir. So why the string quartet? Obviously, we were thrilled to have a string quartet played. I know the players were thrilled to play it, but and I mean, in my opinion, it added so much. Like if you look at the second movement, it does acknowledge you, and then that that imitation of a string part, it imitates that. And then also, in fact, like the triplet eighth, da ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba, right? So with that, and then against the triplet quarter and stuff, that was a really interesting. So why a string quartet?
String, I've been writing more and more for strings in the last few years. Basically, anytime I have kind of a larger choral work, I've done this with several cantatas now, written for strings and piano, just because so much sacred music for choir historically, if it has keyboard, it uses the organ, which I've written for the organ, and I like the organ, but something about piano and strings together, I think, is sort of able to capture what an organ does, which is sort of the colors and then like the ability to sustain. And if you have piano and strings kind of all hit the same chord at once, you get the initial like percussive attack of the piano and then the warm sustain of the strings. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, I think. Also, those are instruments that people play. I think most choirs, if they're motivated, they can find a string quartet, either volunteers or people to pay or whatever. As opposed to, like if you score something for an entire orchestra, that becomes much more prohibitive. So part of it is just kind of the minimum instrumentation to be able to create a texture that I feel is really full and warm and inviting. And I'm most comfortable writing for piano. I'm a pianist, and really the piano part I think probably came first. I don't know if I wrote the piano accompaniment with the choir for each movement and then went back and scored the strings. Or if it happened more kind of at the same time, but often in situations like this, I'll kind of think of the piano accompaniment as the main thing, almost so that it could work with just piano and choir, and then add the strings in a way that almost makes them optional. I feel like the strings in this piece are a little less optional. Like it really makes a difference to have them. But most of the musical, harmonic, rhythmic information is in the piano part.
Yeah. So then my last question for now, well, I have two questions, see if we can put it both together. I know people are like, what? But the endings of like the second and third movement, I did it, I don't know if this was the way you wanted it to, but I sensed that you wanted those last notes to just die away. The connection, the reverb between the piano and the piano and the string. So we had, our piano accompanist, Carol Jennings, and the strings, I really didn't just give them a cutoff necessarily because I wanted that sound to just die away. So I didn't even conduct the ending like I normally do for a church anthem. So was that something, hopefully that was the right thing to do? And then secondly, for people who maybe are not music majors enough, because most of the people here are not, some are, like how does composing a piece like this happen? Like, how do you start, and that these are people that sing the anthems, but they don't know how hard it is to write something like this. I mean, to have a blank score and just, that's hard. And David, you do a really good job.
Oh, well, that's very nice. You asked one question that's really easy to answer and one that's really hard to answer.
Indeed.
The first question is easy. I think you nailed it. I certainly wrote the end of each movement, really 1, 2, and 3, kind of to lead very smoothly into the next one. I didn't want any like big finishes, anything that would like inspire applause in the middle of the piece. And kind of going back to how I talked about encountering the text in a way that like feels really fluid from beginning to end. That felt very natural to sort of weave the movements together as much as possible, and not have it feel like there's a strong ending until the actual ending of the 4th movement. So I think you're dead on there. In terms of how the composing works, for me, the composing process is extremely intuitive. It's based on improvising and trying things until you come up with something you like, and then sort of developing that idea to its conclusion. I think of it as sort of like if you were gonna like make an abstract drawing and you were just like doodling on paper. If you made one little doodle and you're like, that's no good, you get rid of it, try again, make a little doodle, that's cool. And what if it went out from here? And then I could do this. It's sort of like that. And I think composers who've done this for many years, which I guess at this point is me, you develop kind of a very reliable sense of what's going to work and not work. And so I don't really end up throwing ideas out a lot. Sort of, I think maybe like we just had the plumber at our house and we had a problem and he was fixing the problem and he didn't like try 5 things that failed and then figure out the right thing. Like he looked at the problem and he was immediately like, I know what to do. That's kind of how I feel about composing. When I see the text, think about what kind of music would work with it, and then just start trying stuff. And I think after a bunch of years of doing this and a lot of time working with my church choirs and school groups and a lot of trial and error, I feel now that I'm at a point where I can really reliably get something down that works well. And then you go back over it and say, all right, well, this moment could be better and I don't like this chord as much. Like you go in and tweak things a little bit. But for me, it's really, I say this a lot and it sounds dismissive, but I mean it completely, truly. My process for composing is to start at the beginning of the piece and keep composing until it's over.
And so how long did it take to write the 4 movements?
I probably, man, I'm not sure. I could go back at the old finale files and see what date I started each of them. I probably did this in maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks tops. Once I mean, once I start on something like this, it's the only thing I'm working on. I probably wrote this in the summer when I have a little more time. So I was probably spending like days at a time on it and getting it done. But yeah, once the process starts, it picks up a lot of momentum and you want to get it done. It's a commission, right? Like they were paying me to write it and they had a concert coming up and it was the next thing I had to do. So there was plenty of motivation to kind of like get it going and get it done.
Yep.
Go ahead. It's open to the floor. Anybody can answer. Go ahead, David.
Hey,
David F.
yeah. Hey, Brenton. Thank you for letting me sing. And David, thank you so much for writing such a marvelous piece. I'm just kind of curious of the translation of the piece and where the translation came from. I'm really interested in the 2nd movement and how you chose the noble army of martyrs instead of, I know others translate it as the white robed army of martyrs. So I'm just kind of curious on where the translation came from and why you specifically chose that translation.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is going to be a disappointing answer to your question, but the truth is the only version of this text I know is the one from the Blue Lutheran Worship Hymnal from the 1982, I think. And the text that I used in this piece is the exact text that they have in there as hymn 8. And that's what I've been singing since I was very young. We used to sing it more at my old church in Michigan. I don't know if I've ever sung it in Nebraska. But that's the version of the text I know. And probably if you really want to know, we could probably look in that hymnal and I bet it says who translated it, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Yep. So one question I would have is for someone who is, if you're someone who is interested in starting composition, because I've also thought of maybe starting to compose my own works. What advice could you give me to really start understanding composition and how to start composing my own stuff?
Yeah, you're recording this, right? Because I'm going to say a bunch of stuff really fast.
Yes.
Yes, we are, David. We are. Yes.
Sing in a choir, which you're already doing. Great. Get as good at piano as you possibly can. The piano lays out the relationships between notes better visually than any other instrument. And the ability to sort of quickly build chords and scales and intervals when you see them in front of you on the piano is unmatched by any other experience. So no matter what kind of music you want to write, get good at piano. If you have to start from zero, start from zero. If you already play a little bit, get better. The hymnals, the Bach chorales are great resources to just play something every day and kind of get chords and melodies under your fingers. Listen to lots of great music, listen to the kind of stuff you want to write, figure out what is happening in the music you love. So don't just sort of let it wash over you mindlessly, but listen very purposefully and try and figure out like how the composer put it together. If you can play stuff by ear, if there's a piece you really like, put it on the recording and sit at the piano and try and figure out how to make those sounds. That is how you build up your toolbox and your harmonic and rhythmic vocabulary. And then the last and most important advice is to just start doing it. You have to just start composing, and it's not going to be very good at first, but write something and have someone play it. And that experience, if you compose 8 bars and have someone play it and you listen to it, you'll learn more in that than in any number of, books you could read or anything like that. If I compare it to like, if you wanted to get really good at shooting free throws in basketball, you might consult like a resource about like the proper form or technique or whatever. But after a certain point, and you get there pretty fast, the book is not going to help you anymore. You have to go start shooting free throws, and you're probably going to miss a lot of them at first. But eventually you'll see them go in. And that's where you start to like figure out how to make it happen. So everyone I know who composes does it a little bit differently. There is no one right way to do it. But those are the best pieces of advice I can give you.
Thank you, David.
David, I had one question in regards to the second movement. The one where it's the measure 9, the flowing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I was teaching the choir this, they weren't getting the they were slowing down the rhythm. I was curious why, I have my piano here, right here, but obviously why slow this down? Like, why was the triplet figure an idea? Let's turn this up here. But this, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Bach's Prelude in C.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I was talking about how to get them. So what I did was, because they were slowing down the rhythm, so I had the choir actually speak, because I wish Keith Wiley could have made it tonight, because Keith's he's a former professor of jazz studies. And so I had the choir speak and then so they sang, and then they thought of that triplet, the holy, and then I had them accent and really separate the quarter notes. Does acknowledge you. And then I said, tell a story to a 4-year-old. Does acknowledge you. Does acknowledge you. So was there any inspiration on that triplet quarter? And would you agree with that assessment that it just needed energy on that? Does acknowledge you. I feel like that's what really drives that part.
I think so. I think there's naturally, because you have triplets in the piano. I'm looking at the score over here. Because you have triplets in the piano and then some 8th note motion that's not triplets in the voice, there's like a metric dissonance there. So yeah, I do think you need to kind of emphasize the rhythms in the vocal part. I think you nailed it with the comparison of the Bach Prelude, because that's like the first example we give to students of what they call a figuration prelude, where it's just a series of chords, but each chord is played on a pattern. So instead of ba, 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 it's and it's the same chord, but you're just playing one note at a time. And so it creates the effect of forward motion. That's all those triplets are doing, because in each bar, I think, it's the exact same chord, just 3 times in a row. You're just getting the same chord spread out into the sort of horizontal motion. So that was the idea behind the triplets, and just something different. There were really no triplets in the first movement in like a consistent way like that. So just changing the beat division from 2 to 3 just sort of creates some variety from one movement to the next. Other than that, there's not really any super important rhyme or reason to it, other than kind of just getting some diversity of texture going. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, because like the Bach piece, and I'm at my keyboard.
Uh-huh.
From my head. I see that just changes slightly, etc. And in your piece,
Uh-huh.
slight change. But you do actually 2 measures of the same chord.
Right.
My absolute favorite chord is on measure 19. You have the,
Yeah.
that is absolutely my favorite chord, because that's what, makes the piece kind of mysterioso. It makes it like throughout all the world, every person that's acknowledging God as, acknowledging him. And I just absolutely love the chord process. I absolutely love the comforter. It reminds me of like Psalm 23. The Lord is my, how many settings of Psalm 23. So that part, that comforting, that, that F major 7th chord, and then it goes right to A minor. That really is the statement. Do you have any comments on that?
Thanks for picking up on that. That's really nice to hear. Yeah, the chord at 19 is G major in the right hand and E flat in the left hand, which I guess technically if you called that a chord, it would be like E flat augmented with a major 7th, or like E flat major 7 sharp 5. I don't like to think of it that way. I just think of it as like a dissonant, like what we would call a slash chord, a recognizable triad up here and a bass note down below that makes it kind of angry against each other. And yeah, I think that comes right out of the mystery of the text. The way you said the kind of mysteriousness, I think that's exactly right. This text really resonates with me in that way. There's such a kind of grandeur to it, and almost an eeriness to it. I think it feels very like high church. But and then the other spot, you mentioned the comforter. I thought about that really hard, because I think it would have been easy to set that more plainly. But I decided to stretch out comforter and put some kind of poignant chords in there, because I thought about like, when do you need the comforter? It's like when awful stuff is happening, which we don't have to look very far to find examples of that. Like that music was meant to try and capture that a little bit.
Excellent. Anybody else? Anybody have a question for David? I know Carol has questions. She's looking. I can see her. Carol is our piano accompanist. I know she has questions.
I do have a question. In the third movement, when you took upon yourself on page 5, in the orchestral part, you have F sharp, E, D sharp, but in the piano part, it was all flats. Why?
Oh, tell me again where that is. I want to look at it before I answer you.
It's in the third, when you took upon yourself.
Yep.
Page 5.
Can you give me a measure number? I'm looking at the full score.
Yeah, measure numbers would help.
20, measure 25.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. So you want to know why it's flats in the piano, but sharps in the cello?
Yes.
Okay,
I
let me
don't know
look.
much about strings, but
Okay, I'll tell you why. I had a reason. The chord in the piano on beat 3 with the A flat, the G flat, the D flat, and then the F flat down below. I hear that as I would call that like D flat sus4 over F flat in the bass. So it's like the minor third down below and the 4th suspended in the right hand. I did not want to notate that chord with sharps, because I didn't want the A sharp, what would it be? It would be a G sharp and an F sharp next to each other. Something about that seemed weird to me. And the next chord too, because if I did that in sharps on beat 4, man, I'm sorry for the rest of you, this is very inside baseball. The beat 4 chord, would have been D sharp and then C sharp, F sharp, G sharp. And something about the way that looked on the page as a voicing seemed more awkward, harder for the pianist to read than putting it in flats. The cello, though, is just playing a single line and it's leading down to C sharp. So in the cello, I didn't want to go flat, 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 sharp. But in the piano, I thought the pianist is going to be thinking chord, 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 rather than about like the shape of the line. So I didn't have a problem using flats and then hopping over to sharp language on the downbeat of 26. I hope that's a good enough explanation.
Yeah, David, also, if you look at measure 23 and 24, it's a suspension into G flat major. So if you go right to the next beat and you're playing a bunch of sharps,
that's a great point.
That's going to be so much more confusing.
You're absolutely right.
Recognizing the flat until you're in C sharp minor.
It continues from the previous resolution. You're exactly right. 100%.
Does that make sense, Carol?
Yeah, and it was
It's a very good question.
a
I
little
remember
difficult, but Brenton and I got through it.
I remember asking a composition professor about this when I was in undergrad, and I said, like, when I have to choose between flats and sharps and it could go either way, what do you do? Like, do you make it line up vertically to make sense, or do you make it make sense horizontally? And he said, always make it make sense horizontally so the part can see what it's doing. And that has issues too, because there's no perfect solution when you're kind of hopping between key areas, and any music that's harmonically rich is going to have some moments where you have to kind of choose what the best way to notate something is, and all you can do is try to make it as understandable as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for playing it.
Yeah, it's the accompaniment. I think the piano accompaniment is the hardest thing about this piece. I think it's even harder than the choir parts. I mean, what Carol did, it is hard to keep track of, when we did it wasn't perfect by no means. It's hard, but you have to really be focused throughout all four movements. And that's what's hard. I think the piano part by far is the hardest in this piece.
And that is very deliberate on my part, because if there's one person in the room who you can trust to have some musical training and some music theory knowledge, it's the pianist, right? The pianist has the best chance of sort of navigating the fullness of the harmony, which, it's not like a single singer could do that anyway in a voice part or a single string. The piano kind of has to carry a lot of the load here. But that's on purpose. If I want to write something that I know is going to make the choir feel like safe and supported, I want to put all that harmonic musical information into the piano part so that anytime you sing something, you're hearing it in the piano part too.
Thank you. I struggled for a while, but I got it.
I appreciate that.
So David, you had mentioned this was a commissioned piece. Did you know the size of the choir you were writing it for?
Oh, I did at the time. I don't remember the exact number, but they're pretty large. I want to say it was maybe like 40, 45, somewhere in that range.
So would you recommend a choir of 12 trying to do this?
Well, it wasn't 12, but
No.
I definitely did not write it for a large choir on purpose. You'll notice there's hardly any divisi. Is there any divisi at all beyond 4 parts? Maybe just in like 1 or 2 spots.
There's divisi in the 4th movement, Dave.
Okay,
That's
right.
It doubles, the altos and tenors double. And actually what we did is
That's right.
I had the
That's
tenors from
right.
the lower part and the altos.
That's
kind
right. That's right.
It
Okay.
kind of worked out for us.
Yeah, and those are kind of like big held block chords, which I think it's easier to do divisi on that rather than like a 6-part texture where the chords are shifting and you got to like find every interval. That's a recipe for disaster for most choirs, not just, church choirs. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was talking about divisi. What were we talking about?
The divisi on the 4th movement, but he was asking whether, you would recommend this for 12. Now, actually, yeah.
I think it's certainly okay to do it with a small choir. I think there's like a scope to it and like a lushness that sounds really nice if you have a lot of voices. But I think it will work perfectly well. I would be totally comfortable giving this to my church choir when we haven't done it, but I would do it with 12. Yeah.
Now, David, when we actually did this yesterday at our church service, we had 30 singers total in this production that were there.
Right.
So we had 30, which was kind of a medium-sized choir. Are we the first church choir that has ever done? I know Concordia has done it, and I know
Yes.
your father conducted
That's
it
right.
on
My
video.
dad conducted it with his college choir. I would have to look back and say, I think this has only had one or two other performances, and I'm pretty sure one was a college choir in Indiana, maybe, and one was a church choir somewhere else. But I don't think there have not been very many performances total at all. So you guys are in a small handful of groups that have taken it on.
You can
So-
definitely add our church name, Millersville Community Church, on the
Yes,
bucket
yes.
list of this.
I will.
That'd be great. Oh, Dave, the one thing that people might not know is there was someone, one of our associate pastors, Jacob, came up to me, and one of the youth person said that Von Kampen family sounds like a musical family. And a lot of people might know you, but they might not know your family. I know, obviously, your sister, your father, of course. Can you talk about how musical your family is? Because it is amazing. The Von Kampen family is very musical.
Well, yeah, like I said, there is music in the house from a very young age, and the only other career I wanted to have was be a shortstop for the Detroit Tigers, and that didn't pan out. So I had to go. You can see my Tigers banner back on the wall. That didn't pan out. I had to quit baseball in high school because I wasn't fast or strong. I could aim the ball really well, but I couldn't throw it hard enough. So music seemed like the obvious choice for me, and it's kind of gone that way for my siblings too. My sister Andrea is a folk singer. She makes recordings and tours and plays all over. She's doing a great job. She's my youngest sibling. She's 8 years younger than me. And my younger brother Paul just finished his doctorate in choral conducting. He's following in Dad's footsteps. He's headed up to Concordia St. Paul to take over their choir program next fall. And then my other sister is the black sheep. Rachel is a math teacher.
Oh boy.
I don't
Then
know.
your father,
I don't know
too.
how that happened, but she loves it and she's good at it. So she played trumpet in college in the marching band, but did not go that way for a career. So that's probably a good thing.
And of course, your dad is a really well-known, choral conductor as well. And so wonderful. Anybody else have questions for David? Sandy?
I don't have a question, but since the 7th grade, I have been singing in cantatas, whatever you want to call them. But I have never had one that I have enjoyed anyway near as much as this one. I was talking to a lady in the grocery store today that I did not know, and telling her how much joy I got out of singing this.
That
It
is so
really
delightful.
touched me. It really touched me.
Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate hearing it so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your music.
Oh, I'm delighted to have the privilege of making music. What a joy of a life.
So
Anybody?
Brenton, how did you come across this piece? Was it on a YouTube or what?
Okay, so I knew David. We this is the first time we've had a conversation, but we have texted in the past, obviously. So from the choral conducting standpoint, I have a master's degree in voice and a master's degree in choral conducting. So I kind of understand the theory side of it, because, when you go for a master's of choral conducting, you obviously have to analyze every chord, right? And you have to know every melody, you have to know every phrase. And I had a very tough 2 professors that really grilled me. I had to conduct and literally know almost everything to get my 2 degrees. And then I also am a singer. So I've sung everything from classical to church music. But long story short, I kind of knew that it needed to be something that was harmonically interesting, but also something that would be, interesting. Obviously the text has to be, theologically sound. The melody has to be easy enough for the choir. And oftentimes, as I tell people, I go to Millersville Community Church. This was in January. In the middle of the night, about 1, 2 in the morning, I was looking through online at the church choir room, looking through multiple things. And there was about I'd say 25 different pieces I listened to and just scrolling, and nothing seemed to work. But then a couple weeks later, we had a music meeting, and the church wanted us to have a string quartet. So then I specifically narrowed the search to short pieces or any pieces with string quartet in it. And first came up was David von Kampen's In Glory Everlasting. It just came up on YouTube. And I knew of David's writing. I never performed any of his works. I never sung any of his work, but I knew David. I knew he was a composer. And then what happened was this In Glory Everlasting came on, and I listened to the whole thing about another evening. I'd say at about 2:30 in the morning. And it just, the Holy Spirit spoke to me, and he said, this is the one, and it's going to work. And, and then I was like, that's it. That's the one. Because it was a service about praise, and it, even though it's very liturgical, a little more classical perhaps than what we've other done, I knew this piece would be the right one. Some people, there were some doubters, I know, but I knew that by the end of the process, I knew at least most of the choir would understand it. I knew our congregation, we're a Methodist church, David. I knew they would understand the text, and but ultimately the In Glory Everlasting, the fourth movement, leads us to the highlight. It doesn't need to be a big ending like Total Praise, Richard Smallwood, or The Name of Names by Gary Rhodes. This piece kind of went through the message. So, and then the other thing, David, what we did was we didn't actually do them all four together. I know that's what you wanted, because the choir was concerned about the 14 minutes straight. But we did the first two movements, and then I did the John Stainer's Crucifixion, So Thou Liftest Thy Divine Petition, with a Metropolitan Opera singer who's famous in Lancaster. And then we did the hymn When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, and it ends in F major. And then we transitioned that, the familiar hymn, with your the third movement, and it really worked. And so that's kind of the process when you took upon yourself. So that was kind of the process. It's a different thing from the conducting world. Obviously, you go through a whole bunch of music and you narrow it down. I mean, if you see me in the choir room 2 a.m, I've got 50 scores lined up on the table surrounding the choir room, and I have to narrow it down and obviously get the Pastor Carey's text and really try to find the right one. And there's multiple things, but David's piece was just one of the most gorgeous pieces for string quartet I've ever heard. And I knew that we needed to do this this time. So it's just a compliment to David and what he's done. So
that's so nice to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions for David? I know, Mom, you have a question.
Another thing that works for our church, because we have a contemporary campus and then we have a traditional campus. So it's that pulling apart, that constant friction there. And he used to do the cantatas, but he finds the music festivals work because we tries to put as much variety in the music, so that people that do not like classical music, or people that don't understand the long works, there's enough variety in there that we're hoping everyone's enjoying the music. And if one piece isn't exactly to your taste, the next piece will be. And we're incorporating praise and worship and traditional hymns and modern hymns. And then he tries to educate them a little bit on where the background is and who composed it. And so we're trying to make it a festival because a church worship service or festival needs to be something every single person that walks in the door, no matter your age or your tastes, is going to feel touched. And I think that really got accomplished by doing the 2 parts and then moving to something different. An American's attention span is so short.
Yes,
I mean, we have a short attention span for listening to the same style of anything. We're ready for when's the next thing going to happen? And so the music festivals really accomplished that. And we were very pleased at how your music was accepted by everyone. I was watching the people in the congregation, and it didn't matter what your musical background or your taste was. Everyone thoroughly enjoyed and got
so nice to hear
from that piece of music. And that's the idea, not shoving the music down somebody's throat, but presenting it in a way that it's palatable. You think about going to a restaurant, and you might try a little bit of this or you're trying sushi and you've never had it, and you know, trying to get people to hear something opposite from their taste in a way that it's adventurous and they're benefiting from it. And so,
Yeah.
but your piece was beautiful, and it did work well splitting, because I think if he'd gone all the way through, some people there couldn't take 20 minutes of serious music.
Yeah. I think that's the right choice. I'm glad you made it work for what you guys
Really,
needed.
our
That's
goal
good.
is always to bring us together.
Mhm.
And bridge those gaps.
It was, David. And the other thing we wanted to make sure when the pastor and, you know, Pastor Sherrill was involved in this, who's also in the Zoom, and our senior pastor, you couldn't make it tonight, but he sends his best wishes. You know, we wanted to make sure that the congregation got the text. Because oftentimes in music, we wanted the text on the screen, the PowerPoint, but we also wanted everybody to have the text as they were reading, and a lot of them were reading it on the live stream. I had 3 cameras. I had the live stream, I had the camera facing the conductor, and another camera facing the choir. And then I looked at many people's faces, and a lot of them were really paying attention, and it added a lot. And Pastor Carey and I are we both love the deep theological talk. We could go on for hours. His background, my background, and he thought this piece was he could understand how the music complemented the text. You know, like the crucifixion part, movement 3, really, really the statement that the sharpness of death, and then you open the kingdom of heaven, and it goes to this bright G major. Yeah. It sounds very ethereal. It sounds very heavenly. So the text really, you really write well for the voice. I seen some of your videos with your college, you know, kids singing, and it's great, David.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that you kind of are sensitive to the music and the text working together. That's the whole ball game, I think. You know, anytime you write for voice, anytime you're setting text, you've got to make the text come through the music, and more than come through. You have to find the music that's already inside those words. So I'm glad you appreciate that.
Yeah. Sandy said, another Sandy, she said, I appreciated the text in hand and making it more personal. Yeah, I agree. Do you have a question, Grace?
Or a comment?
No, I was into it. I helped them get their parts at the sopranos, because I'm a soprano. I have a degree in music.
She played the parts complimented playing their parts on the piano. But you didn't hear that. We covered it up. But Grace was really a big part too. Yeah. Because oftentimes you hear the come in, a choir was not quite getting their notes. And then we had to think of some ways that they could get it. We have a pastor, one of our pastors on staff is here, Pastor Shaw. I don't know if you have a question or in regards to the, you know, our comment or something, or.
I just really enjoyed it.
Wonderful.
I'm so glad. Thank you.
And I think it was also a matter of maybe divine timing, because with COVID, we were not singing for a year. And then to come back and to strengthen our voices once again, this was a 2-hour singing Sunday. So for a lot of us, singing an hour and a half was putting a strain on our voice that we wouldn't have been able to do 8 months ago.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like it was a really great event. I caught a little bit of it on the stream, on the link you sent me. It looked just really like everybody was super into it, and you know, the more music, the better.
Yeah. Wonderful. Anybody else? James, I know, Anita, I know that we got some guests here. Do you have questions or anything? There's some of our guests that were joining us. You know, James and Anita are both musically gifted singers here.
No, I'm just enjoying the opportunity to meet a fellow musician, not only a fellow musician, but a fellow composer, and just enjoying just the opportunity to hear, like, not only just about the piece, but just how you went about writing the piece, and how you went through the process of putting it all together, and just not only you putting it together, but making it in a way that it was enjoyable for us to be able to sing it.
Well, thank you. What a nice thing to say. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all night. I mean, everyone likes to talk about themselves. So there's a natural ease to just sort of talk about yourself. But this is really exciting stuff to me, to be able to sort of explain how music works and what makes it effective. And gosh, you guys are so dialed into like the decisions I made. You've asked such wonderful questions. This is like one of the certainly the most astute church choirs I've ever talked to.
Well, that's a wonderful compliment coming from David. That's really, thank you. Really. Anybody else?
Do you understand that set class theory?
The set class that some of the people probably don't
Do you
know.
understand that set class theory stuff? Do you use that when you compose?
I certainly don't use it to compose. I've taught it in the past, but I at UNL I teach freshman theory and ear training, and then I teach advanced ear training. And in the freshman class, they don't get to set theory and atonal music and 12 tone. And in the advanced ear training class, I can do whatever I want, and I don't enjoy that music very much, so I just don't talk about it.
Good. Okay.
But if I had to teach it tomorrow, I would have to brush up pretty hard. But yes, at one point I understood it.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's something that we had to study. Obviously, that's not the music here.
It's the craziest thing, but
The
it's all
Schoenberg 12
mathematics.
tones, yeah.
It takes it's very strange.
Well, the
Yeah.
thing about that music is that like it's thought to be so difficult and contemporary, but like most of that music was written like 70, 80 years ago now. And it's really not. I mean, contemporary music now is much more tonal than that. I think there's sort of a conventional wisdom that says like the history of music, like it started very accessible and then it got more complicated and then it got really weird, and that's still where we are, and that's not where we are. Like choral composers now write really accessible stuff. And when you look at the most popular choral music being written today, it's not like weird avant-garde stuff. It's very tuneful music by contemporary composers. So the second Viennese school and the set theory and 12 tone, that's an important part of music history. It's not really something I listen to for fun. It's certainly not something I use for composing, but it's fine. It has its place. And as long as we don't, pretend that that's the fresh new thing anymore, because it's really not.
What was that question on that test you were wondering the answer to? Maybe he knows the answer.
Oh, well, one of the tests I took, and I still don't know the answer, is how, the set theory, like the 12 tone row, obviously there's 12 pitches, but sometimes in 12 tone rows, they have like 15 notes on the thing, and you have to figure out why. I don't know
Is that allowed? Can you have 15 notes?
One of
in a
them was a
12 row?
22 note row, but it's supposed to be a 12 tone row, but questions that try to throw you off one.
I'm not sure.
He missed passing the test.
You get him
by
the theory
one,
questions,
and he's
Mom.
trying
My
to
goodness.
Figure out which one he got wrong, and then they won't tell him.
But David knows his theory even better than I do, and I'm pretty good at theory. But David, you are like an expert on theory.
Oh well, thanks for saying that. I music theory is just talking about music, like what makes it work, why does it sound the way it does. I firmly believe that music theory is not something that should be seen as scary. If you love music, you should love music theory. And a good music theory teacher could get you to love music theory.
Good.
Oh, I bet students love you. That's a great.
Oh, well, I try my best.
Yeah, wonderful.
Because your piece had a modern contemporary feel to it, even though it felt very classical and very, especially because of the text, but yet it appealed to today's. Almost everybody liked it, so there was definitely a contemporary appeal.
That's a very nice compliment. You want to write things that are accessible without feeling like old-fashioned. You don't want it to feel like it's something that like Mozart literally could have written with all the stylistic ticks and indicators that you would assume from another composer who lived a long time ago. So to sort of find your own harmonic voice and your own compositional sound is something that I think good composers are able to do, but it takes a long time. I mean, the stuff, when I listen back to things that I wrote even 10 or 15 years ago, often it kind of feels like, man, I wouldn't do it like that anymore. It sounds too much like XYZ. And out of 10 years from now, I might think this piece feels that way. We'll see. Hope not. I hope I figured it out.
I know, David, in the future, we will definitely be singing more of your music.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope you
We
do.
will.
There's a lot you can look at. I hope you can find some good things.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Nita, one of our singers, said, I like that as well. It had modality, classic, but in its hints of contemporary sacred musical melody. That is very, yeah, I agree, concur with that. Anybody else? I see Susan, I see Heidi, I see Pat, I see the Ziegers. Any other comments before we wrap it up? David is a very busy man.
Get to say anything?
Yeah, she did. Did you wanted to say any one of you wanted to say anything?
Hi, David. Maria Pappas over here. Thank you so much. The music was really amazing. I'm so happy that I've met this group and I've had the opportunity to sing with them, and really having a good time. Your music had such great energy under it, like Schubert, like I could hear all kinds of things, like movement underneath, and it makes me feel like I'm on top of it all the time.
Wow.
It's so lyrical.
Oh my goodness.
It's nice to sing. I feel like you write for the singer. You really, truly do. And I just feel like I could soar at moments. And then there's these like moments of jazz, you know, that I sat with Brent and I said, oh boy, this is really tough. I'm going to have to sit down and get this under my breath and figure out where I'm breathing and what I'm doing. Fourth movement, I'm not going to lie, I was very nervous yesterday thinking, oh gosh, I hope I can hear where I'm coming in. I kept my eyes on Brenton the whole time. I was like, okay, look at Brenton. Every entrance, make sure I look at him. Make sure that I hear everything that I'm doing. And most importantly, you know, pay attention. But I love it that it has that energy that when I would sing Schubert or something, I say Schubert because I think of like Widmung or something, you know, some of the songs that I've sung, the leader in the past, or Schumann even, you know, that movement underneath, but it's that excitement where your heart's racing. I could feel my heart racing yesterday before we even came in. I'm going, oh gosh, let me count. And I'm dancing. And the woman behind me saying, please keep dancing. You're conducting, you're bringing me in. She was very tiny. She was like 4 foot tall. I don't know, but she's super cute. She said, just keep dancing. I said, okay, I'll keep dancing. But thank you so much. It was such a joy to sing your music. And I'm just truly blessed with this group. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for
you guys give such great compliments. My head is swelling over here. I mean, that's exactly the reaction you want when you write something. I can't say how much I appreciate it.
Wonderful comment. Anybody else?
I'll just throw in to tag on to Sandy how wonderful this music was. And Brenton, when you said, you know, the Holy Ghost spoke to you and this is it and you're gonna get it. You told us that a lot, like you're gonna get this. This is hard and you're gonna get this. And we did. And it was really fun on Sunday to perform it and to have it be a success. And yeah, it's super exciting to meet you, David. And thank you for writing that. And hopefully we can do some more of your music because it was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And Brenton, thank you for conducting it.
Yeah.
You're like perfectly on, perfect. Every entrance, I looked at him, I watched his face. I said, okay, this is it. Breathe, go. He took the breaths for us, everything. You're going to do amazing things, honey. Amazing things. And so that's it.
Well, David, you know, it's not easy music. I mean, but we really studied the score. Obviously, the composer and the conductors are the ones that have to know. The composer probably knows the music better than anybody, and the conductor's second. And so I really had to do my homework on this, listening to this piece and going back on the certain sections and really trying without really getting a coaching from David what he wanted. And when you listen to, whether it's a, classical piece, I did Beethoven's Ninth Symphony last week, and you really try to get in the mind of Beethoven. You really try to get in the mind of David. No offense, David, don't think of the, but you try to get an idea of what David wants. What does he mean by that? So you really study the score, and that in fact helps and then you really encourage the choir to get there and really, you really have to be together on that In Glory. Especially that it's a fast 4. At some sections where it's slowed down, but really when that contrapuntal section, make them to be numbered with your saints, that really, I think that was one of the best times we have sung that section. I think that section really came together, and just everybody really did their job and came together, and we worked on it. We have high singers, we had low singers, we had variety of backgrounds, but we were one choir singing this, and we got through it together. So good. Wonderful. Any other comments? We did not hear from Pat, and we didn't have hear from Susan yet. Do you have comments?
I would say that the music was incredibly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The music was incredibly beautiful, and I felt that we are much better singers for the future because we were able to do this.
Yeah.
And we did it well, and we did it together.
That's great. That's lovely, lovely thought.
So Brenton's waiting for me to say something. I'm sure, because I always have something to say. And I must admit, I'll be one of the people that say it at the beginning. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know about this piece. But, I give Brenton a lot of credit. And oh my gosh, Carol, I don't know how you did it all. But Brenton, you were up there and mouthing the words and, all the things you did, that helped to keep us on track. So it was enjoyable music. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Well, they say with God, all things are possible.
Yes, amen.
This was
You
a possible
all
test.
proved it is true.
This was probably one of the, out of my 8, I've been at Millersville for 8 years now. And I think out of all the pieces, we've done Handel's Messiah, we have done other pieces by other composers. And I say this is probably one of the hardest ones, but it was also one of the most enjoyable ones I think we've sung. And certainly my 8 years conducting this choir, I think it's definitely one of the ones, looking back on my time, this was certainly one of those pieces that will be up there. I know you have a Lenten cantata, but we'll talk about that in the future. I know you have a Lenten cantata out, and I did listen to some of that. So that's a possibility for a future.
There's a Lenten cantata and a Christmas cantata and an Easter cantata that's not available yet. So I'm trying to get them all.
I have not listened to the Christmas one yet, but yeah, I will take a listen and let you know. I know, Sandy, I know you had your hand up. Did you have a comment or something?
Well, I did thank David, and what can I say? Brenton, the singers that came and joined us, like I'm sorry, I can't read you, Maria, and definitely Carol. Well, she was just right in there giving us all the foundation that we needed in the music. So it all came together, and like I said, it was my favorite in 62 years. So
well, I know I watched the YouTube video this afternoon, and my wife was smiling quite a bit. So I know she enjoyed singing it.
Just a couple more. I know David's are you in finals week this week, David?
Next week is finals week for us. We're late this year.
Yeah, this is the crazy time. So we'll just keep it to a couple more questions and comments. And I know David's got to run. I know there's some comments here, but another Sandy said, thank you not only for the opportunity to hear the music, but also for allowing us to meet David, the living composer. James Johnson said, amen. And then Anita said, I came in on the end of all the hard work. So I'm very grateful to you, Brenton, for the mass undertaking of putting all things together and to have me be a part of the Praise Festival. David, this is a beautiful work. enjoyed it and will share it with friends. Thanks, much blessings. Anita and I met the first time. Anita was one of those singers who was reaching out, and Anita actually emailed me and said, can I be a part of this? And I said, sure. And she literally learned the music within 2 days, actually. Anita was the one, and James too was the other one that came in late in the process. So I really tip my hat to those two, because, you know, what we've noticed, David, when we add that extra singer, that extra bass, soprano, tenor, you know, alto, it just adds so much more. You know, I tend to think of a choir, you know, I'm a solo singer and I love the solo work that I'm doing, but when I'm in a choir, I like to be unified with my part and ultimately unified with the choir. And when we add James and Anita and Maria and, you know, other singers that, you know, join our main core singers, it really adds a lot. You know, and I didn't hear any negative comments about your piece at all. And I talked to like 50 people after church. I stayed till 6 p.m., 6:30 tearing that sanctuary. I mean, I got to church 7 a.m. and it didn't leave till 6 p.m. Because we had to get the sanctuary back. But everybody really enjoyed it. I know one of our bassists, Dan Polkish, really thought that he wanted me to say that the Holy Spirit really was moving at that service. And David, your piece was a part of that. I mean, it really was. And the message was really brought across, and it added so much to our church service. So kudos to you and your music, and great.
Thank you.
Anybody else real quick before we let him go? Because he's got finals week next week, and you know how that is.
Craig did a lot of moving stuff around.
Oh, Craig
helped
with the tearing down. We had a platform. Obviously, Craig's one of those. We had this extension platform in the church, and no one has ever done it and set it up in 4 years. And Judy, I had to reach out to Judy Schroeder, and she was here, but she had to leave, I guess. And I was like, how are we going to set this up? And Craig was the go-to guy. He came in there. I didn't have to do hardly anything. He and John Falegi, and John's another one that was working hard on the sound. I mean, my goodness, the sound was, I mean, he had a lot of mics and getting the sound. So there's just so many parts. What Grace added, what Carol added with the piano, what Craig did with the platform extension. Sharon Hines, it was Sharon and her husband were helping me. I was moving 30 chairs. I guess I'm doing this myself. And they came in and helped move 30 some chairs into the sanctuary. So, you know, we all came together. You know, I tend to think of Millersville Community Church, our theme is to lead and learn and live and love like Jesus. And we did that. You know, we all came from different backgrounds. And David, you added that. We will add you into the Millersville community family as well. So you're part of the family.
I'm honored. I accept.
Okay. Grace, you have a comment?
I can say that the sound was a challenge to me, because sometimes the choir didn't even hear me. I didn't know how loud I should play, but then I got it.
Yeah, you did get it.
I
You did.
Wonderful.
And these days, not only do you have the sound in the sanctuary has to sound right, but the sound on the live stream has to sound right. And that's not always the same thing. So that adds a new challenge.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. One or two more, and then we'll wrap it up. A lot of it's comments and stuff. So I guess I'll say something here. So what do you hope to accomplish in your composing? And then secondly, and so we'll leave with this, what do you hope this piece, you know, obviously we did it, but, you know, this will be obviously uploaded on my YouTube, if that's okay with you, David. And there might be a church choir that, you know, in the future that might want to sing this, or, you know, a college choir, or perhaps a choral arts society. What do you hope to accomplish in that piece? And then what things you've got coming up? What projects you got?
Well, I think the goal is always to make happen exactly what happened for you guys, is just to create musical moments that sound great and resonate with people. And obviously this work has a text that I find especially important and meaningful. And I think That's obviously a really significant part of it. So I just hope that the music is received with thoughtful ears, and couldn't really ask for any better than that than you guys based on what I've heard tonight. And then in terms of what did you say coming up? Well, what's coming up? Like
Well, what do you
compositionally?
hope with, let's start with the first one, then we'll do the second. What do you hope with this piece? If anybody might be hearing about In Glory Everlasting, a future church, I'll tell you this, David, I've got many music director friends all over the world. I will highly recommend this
Oh,
piece.
I like to hear
My
that.
friends.
I like to hear
have
that.
a friend, he's has a big choir, 50 something in Washington D.C. and
Great.
I'm going to talk to him about this piece. A couple of
Amazing.
groups that I know of. But what do you hope to accomplish with this piece? Whoever is interested or perhaps wanted to put it in their service, in their concert, stuff like that.
I certainly don't have any plans for this piece, like specifically, like specific ensembles or specific like recordings, that type of thing. But really, it's the same answer. I mean, it's what happened for you guys. I hope that whoever comes across it will appreciate the music and pay attention to how the music and the text are working together, and then create a musical moment that is meaningful for the people who are performing it and for the people who are listening to it. That's basically what it comes down to. I couldn't ask for anything other than that.
Yeah. And then the last question is, what pieces you got coming up? There might be something down the road we might, perform, or maybe talk about your other music perhaps. And it doesn't have to be a big major work. It could be a church choir anthem. Obviously, the nice thing about you, David, is kind of all sides of it: the jazz side, the classical side, the church side, the college side of music. But what other works you have, and what plans you have for the future in composition?
I don't have any immediate plans for any large sacred choral works. I had just a short anthem based on a spiritual come out with Concordia Publishing House just about a week ago. This summer, I have some projects need to, what am I doing? I'm scoring out a concert suite from the music for a documentary that I scored. I have to arrange a bunch of jazz music for my jazz choir at UNL. What else? That's kind of all that's coming up right at the moment, but projects come up pretty quickly, so I'm sure there will be more.
And not only you write for the voice, but you write for the piano. I know you have 12 short pieces. I know that you released pretty recently. I know there's other instrumental stuff. Didn't you write a trio or something, or am I wrong on that? Something.
Yeah, there was I have a handful of recording projects on streaming. If you just search my name on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you get music, I've released some recordings of solo piano music, short pieces for piano. I have an album of chamber music that's like saxophones and strings and piano. So yeah, there's some things out there besides the choral music. Definitely enjoy writing for instruments and music that is for lots of different people. That's what's exciting about it for me.
Wonderful. Any last comments for the good of the body from anybody? Anything? Well, wonderful. Oh, Cheryl. Yeah, Pastor Cheryl, go ahead. Oh, no,
I'm just saying, I can say goodbye.
Okay, well, let's thank David so much.
Thanks, everybody.
We really appreciate you, David, and I will see you next week with a different group of people.
Looking forward to it.
For one of my things, I work at this church job, obviously, but I also work at a nursing home, and they were gracious. They live in Kennett Square. You probably have no idea where that is, but it's Chester County. Chester County is in between Lancaster and Philadelphia. Philadelphia's east and Lancaster's more west. They came to the service and heard your whole piece.
Oh, that's so nice.
In fact, I had a 95-year-old person came up to me, a resident, listened to it, and really was in tears through this.
Oh, that's
so. So not only for the singers themselves, but for people of all back, even the youth that perhaps didn't really understand classical music, they really, really enjoyed it. So
I appreciate that so much.
We want to thank you, David, so much, and
thank you for having me.
we'll certainly be in touch and do more of your music in the future.
Sounds
All
great, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you,
really
David.
enjoyed talking with
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks, David. Bye-bye.